All right. Good morning. My name is Mallory Treadway. I'm the marketing event specialist at Keller Schroeder. I have the pleasure of welcoming you to our virtual event this morning. It is called our AI Reality Check, Gaining Business Value in 2025. I hope you filled up your coffee cups this morning because we have a lot of great info coming your way from our panel of experts. And without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to kick it over to Ty Eblin, our Director of Sales, to go ahead and get the conversation started.
Morning, everybody. I am Ty Eblin. I'm the Director of Sales here at Keller Schroeder. And this morning I am joined by Cody Creedemeyer, our Practice Lead of Data Engineering, as well as Brian Bluebaum, our Director of Data Strategy. Before we get kicked off, for those of you who have joined us for webinars in the past, this may look a little bit different. Before, usually have a lot of slide decks, kind of talking to the camera. We thought we may switch things up a little bit this morning and have a little bit more of kind of a conversation, a little bit of a fireside chat that you guys may have seen, kind of spice things up a little bit. So thanks for taking the time to join us this morning, and I hope everybody on gets a lot out of what we're going to speak about in regards to AI. So to kind of get us kicked off, before we dive headfirst into AI, kind of cutting through some of the noise and all of that, for anybody that may be on the webinar, I know for us, I mean, if you've been to any conferences in the past 2, 3, 4 years, I mean, you get beat over the head with anything AI related. I mean, you can't go to a conference and within 3 minutes, they're talking about AI, large language models. I mean, even in the marketplace, I mean, you've got AI toothbrushes, you've got AI toasters. I mean, I think I saw AI water the other day, and someone's going to have to explain to me exactly what that is later. But to try and help our viewers here whenever they're embezzled with all kinds of AI-related information. It's hard to really figure out what they should pay attention to, especially those of our clients that we deal with. So Cody, Brian, can you kind of help me give me a state of the industry in 2025 of kind of where things sit from an AI perspective and not just the marketing from vendors to try and basically say, hey, we're doing something here new by putting AI in front of something that we've done for years. Where does the AI industry actually stand today?
Yeah. Gosh, I think if we can remember, it's possible, go back 18 months in our minds and just kind of think about before the wave, if you will, started. And I mean, think about the Siris and the Hey Googles and stuff like that we had on and that was our virtual or digital assistants that we had. And that was to us at the time, it was AI, right? We had never, for years it had gotten better and better and better. And then but if you think about that technology, it's simply voice activated features we could do with our fingers on our phones.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty simplistic stuff if we really distilled down what that was. And whenever we said, hey, Siri, can you tell me how far away is the sun? And it says, well, Google says. So it gives away the magic. So, hey, I just went to Google and Google this for you, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's this time, third, fourth quarter of 2023, that things change and the chat GPT is happening. And you can imagine that person that hit the go button on that and to release that to the world. And it's like, this is going to change everything.
Mm-hmm.
And cue the headlines, right? Trillions of dollars to the economy. Half of all jobs are going to be disrupted. Every YouTuber is telling you how to use AI to become a millionaire and things like that. Just buy my course. It's just one of those things where and then of course the leaders, the Microsofts, the Amazons, they're riding the wave. They're the one that made the plunge to make the wave in the first place, and then everyone else is trying to keep up. Our Alexas are now Q. Our Cortanas are now ChatGPT. Really, Microsoft had a huge investment in this, and when the wave meets shore, the flood is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
AI is in every product that you mentioned. AI, everything, right? It's in every.
Still get my hands on some of the AI water to see what it can do for me.
I'm gonna have to look into that because yeah.
So it's a matter of it is everywhere, and that raises a lot of interesting things. How do you use it right? How from a personal position to a business position, the security, all these things that are around it. what does it all mean? I think we're gonna dive into a lot of those things today.
And just to add a few things, I mean, you mentioned it with like conferences, right?
Right.
I mean, we went to AWS reInvent November, and just the expo, the amount of vendors that they have there, and how many of those were AI startups,
Right.
right? And so I would be a data guy if I had some stats for you, right? So I was looking, 5,500 AI startups in the US. And Brian already talked about funding, but over $300 billion have been given to those startups, right? Um, so how do you know, how do you wade through the noise? How do you know what their true value proposition is and what the benefit is? What's the ROI for your organization, right? And you'll probably hear us talk a lot about value, and what that means, right? As for our clients and for everyone else that's out there, is just how do you identify the best path forward?
And at least for me, the conferences I've been or the videos that I've watched, that's consistently been kind of the frustrating thing. It's like, hey, this AI thing's going to be able to do something great for you. You know, okay, what exactly can it do? It's like, oh, it's going to be able to do all of this for you. It's like, okay, well, give me what's the meat? Like what, especially for, a lot of our clients, most of our clients aren't Fortune 100 companies. You know what I mean? So whenever you've got, a small SMB, medium SMB, you see all of these things, or even for me coming from an IT consultant at Keller Schroeder, I go to some of these conferences and they talk about all this, and you ask three questions deep, and they're like, "Oh, just you wait and see. It's going to be great." So it'll be interesting to kind of see, as the industry continues to build and build and build, what type of, how it's actually going to add value to our clients.
And I think to that point, I mentioned the flood. It got murky and a little bit hazy because you had your early adopters and the people that were like, I could see an immediate need for this. And then you have the others that are still, they're trying to find that, right? To your point. And I think what we quickly discovered, and this is again, this is intellectual property now. This is a place where the first to market are going to be the first to change and win, right? So
Disruptors.
exactly,
We call it.
exactly. And so it's one of those things where maybe we don't hear all those use cases because why would they share? Why
Right.
would they give away their secrets,
Right.
right? So not that it's super secret, but again, diving further into those things and some of the a little bit later in our talk.
Absolutely. So I know historically, I know AI has technically been around for a long, long time, and and just here recently, it really was the advent, like you said, of Gen AI that kind of brought the terminology AI, at least from a marketing standpoint, at least once again from a conference, where you hear it all over the place. But Gen AI, like your Chat GPTs, like your co-pilots, it was really since the advent of that we've really been having this conversation about AI. And I know that they give you, 135 different ways to technically build out an email or create a really cool picture of your dog. But like whenever it comes to Gen AI, we're so used to using that front end user face. We're so used to typing stuff into Chat GPT or typing stuff into Copilot and say, hey, I wrote this real quick email, make it sound more professional, make it sound easier. But what really goes into the back end of that? I think we're all so used to the front end, the interface. But whenever we talk about our clients are saying, hey, how can we do something similar for us, for the manufacturing facility down the road or a financial services industry, in the region, what really goes into the back end of that our clients, our IT professionals need to know about?
We think it's important to understand that it's one thing just to kind of adopt and use the technology. It's another to know kind of how it works, what it's made up of, if you will. And there's a reason why Nvidia stock has went through the roof. There's a reason why it took a huge plunge.
They went back down through the roof.
Here we go, right? These are all things. These are economies and commodities at scale, right? And so what makes the Gen AI that we know today? It's the because we've been able to prompt with bots or things like that for a very long time, as you mentioned. But the whenever a doll or a mannequin looks too human, that's uncanny valley, and humans don't like that. Whenever
Westworld stuff.
yeah. But whenever I engage with something that I'm getting an answer from, I want that to be very human. I want that to sound and kind of feel like me, and that I'm getting something from an intelligent source that I can trust. And so, what does all of that mean? And gosh, you think about it. Only in recent times has memory, storage, compute been at a cost that could achieve the goals that were the things and the products that we have today. The amount of GPU power powered by NVIDIA in a lot of these places, the H100 card or H200 card now, things like that, those are what make a lot of this possible. They have a significant amount of, they call it GDDR memory that is able to load so much of this data into its memory and be able to use it to have a conversation, to remember what you said, and then be able to respond based off of that. And then, oh, you added this 1 or 2 additional parameters. Well, I can consider those, remember what you said, and then give you an intelligent answer back as if we are having a conversation. And all of that comes at a significant cost. If a customer wants to have that kind of power on premise, then there's a certain barrier of entry to be able to have that amount of compute, those very fast memory devices to be able to at a internal or to especially client facing to be able to do that. And then of course, from the cloud perspective, you have other companies that have, commoditized all of that, where you simply go in and you pay as you go, you buy a piece of it, and it serves your purpose ongoing.
Mhm.
So those are the two big areas where you can buy it, you can have it in your own data center and things like that, or you go to one of the big guys and you just kind of pay for a piece of it. And that can be very, very reasonable.
Yeah, and just to dive into that a little bit more. So, I mean, as Brian mentioned, the big guys, right? You've got Azure AI Foundry that just has all of the different models that you can possibly tap into, right? Your Gemini, your Claude, your GPT, your so on and so forth. And AWS has something similar with that, right? But having those at your fingertips that you can just simply click on it and then deploy, and it's available to you. You can interact with it. You can use it for whatever your use case is, right? But how do you know which one is going to serve you best, right? If you've got, not only do you have 137 or whatever different prompts or interfaces to interact with, but you also have 137 different models that you can choose from, right? And each one of those models can be foundationally different, right? We talk about foundation models. That's what essentially all of those are. But they can have various different levels of specialization, right? So you've got computer vision, if you want to do any sort of object detection or pattern recognition or anything like that. You've got natural language processing. And then a big one that I've heard a lot lately is code generation, right?
Oh yeah.
And so, but it just comes down to, because it's at your fingertips, it's available to you that you can just log in, click on one and go forward with it. How do you know what the right thing is to choose? What's going to actually generate the value that you need, right? So, and then also, foundationally, data, right? I mean, you got to have the memory, you got to have the compute, you got to have all of that, but without the data that's going to be able to be churned through all of these different technical processing components, you're not really going to get the contextual results that you're looking for, right? And so not only just data in the public sector, the public eye of what's being used to create the different LLMs, the models, and so on and so forth that we're interacting with, but again, I'm going to say value a lot today, but to get the value that you need for your organization, use your organization's data. But how clean is that? How accurate is that? How precise is that? And is it actually going to give you any sort of result that you're looking for?
Right. So before we kind of get off the Gen AI train here, whenever it comes to generative AI, especially with our clients that may be watching today, and once again, you say you're going to say value a lot. I'm going to talk about, we don't have Fortune 100, too many of those clients that are probably on the call today. It's more about, the small SMB, the large SMB, the smaller enterprise are thinking, okay, that's all well and good, but I don't have $1 million budget. So before jumping into AI as a whole, let's kind of stick with Gen AI. What are some simple things that our clients can do to kind of help build their case to their leadership on why it makes sense to, be able to invest a little bit from a Gen AI perspective? And what are some things that we may be able to do to help? And then how can we, once again, show our clients value from a generative AI perspective?
Yeah, and just to jump in real quick and to tag off a couple of the points you just made, the data is very important. So that maybe to your earlier said we have services, but we sure do. But it's one of those things where you don't have to have perfect data. You don't have to boil the ocean and say that everything has to be perfect for AI to work. There are feasibility analyses that can be done to be able to say, hey, what's the effort that would be able to get us started on this? And, do we have a cloud environment already? If we do, well, then it's just a click away to add some of these services to that. And we're not talking, again, $1 million Far from it.
Right.
You know, some of the things we've done so far for clients, I mean, you're talking a couple $100 a month, maybe. And again, that all just depends on size and things like that. And we'll get a bit more into some actual case studies a little bit later. But the biggest thing to be able to do is, and where we always start is right here on the whiteboard. You know, let's have an idea. Let's understand, is this customer facing? Is this automation internal? You know, what are we actually wanting to do? Is there a feeling out there that we could probably do something with this? And that's where we usually get started. There's no secret sauce to being able to, change a whole business or change a customer interaction or a product line or manufacturing process.
There's a secret sauce, we wouldn't be here.
Exactly.
Mai Tais.
Yeah. So it is, and I think the most important part about this, and I think you'll touch on this a little bit later, is this is case by case. AI in general, it's going to do what everyone can do with it. It's the clever, it's the ways that you can find to apply it that are going to differentiate you in your marketplace. It's going to give you an edge, so to speak. But all of those things are very possible at a lower barrier of entry than people might think.
Yeah. And I mean, beyond just the whiteboard, I mean, we talk a lot with clients or just in general about a use case portfolio management tool, UCPM for short. But
essentially first acronym of the webinar. I'm surprised it took us almost 20 minutes to get our first acronym out. Yeah, I think we have at least 4 or 5 in the first 5 minutes.
Exactly. I'm getting better.
Right, exactly.
But no, so it's a template that allows individuals to go throughout the business and start to document different use cases or projects, right? That could be beneficial, whether that's cost savings, cost avoidance, revenue generation, whatever it may be. It could be a lot of manual human effort that is just done on a repetitive basis. And that's a great opportunity for automation, leveraging AI, for instance. But whiteboard, just to get in a room, have an ideation session of sorts, and just think through the possibilities. But also, if you've got people throughout the organization that have already read into some of what AI is, what it can do, is utilize that UCPM tool to start to categorize those and capture those and use that to prioritize how to move forward.
Right. So to kind of piggyback off of that, for our clients that are watching today, we've heard a lot from clients that say, okay, came in, CEO is like, hey, I saw something on the evening news tonight and we're not doing AI. We need to do AI. Go. So whenever you have chief data officers out there, whenever you have CIOs out there, you have IT directors that say, okay, I've been given an initiative to go, but I have no idea what in the world to do with this. What have you seen kind of be some of the biggest roadblocks? And then what have you seen be some of the lowest hanging fruit to kind of break through some of those roadblocks for our clients when they're just trying to get started, but they've been tasked by that CEO to have that initiative and I want AI now, go.
Well, and first of all, pretty high expectations, right? Because what's a CEO seeing in the news? I mean, my gosh, we're unlocking texts that humans can't read from 15,000 years ago because AI can see through images and things like that, and statistically or logically just look at things and decipher ancient language, and so on and so forth. So if a CEO is seeing things like that, and how can that apply to my healthcare organization or whatever that is, that's a stretch. But it's very, very possible. It's one of those things where, okay, those type of organs, healthcare, we'll say that, has a tremendous amount of data being studied, but it's also very private. So that introduces a major complexity with, ethical bias, morality, all these different things that have to be considered whenever you're utilizing AI. There's no shortage of data. And also the problem there is you may have unclean data. Think of all the times you go to a healthcare system and it's like, wow, I've been here my entire life, but I have to still enter my name, and I have to check into this place, and that's like, I have no idea who I am. A lot of that information can be duplicated. It can be sprawled and spread across systems and things like that. So the first thing is what are we going to do? Is this a clinician side use case where we're going to try to take a patient history and summarize it so where in an agreeable fashion to where multiple docs can be able to look at this and and especially docs of different types, like radiologists, hospitalists, things like that, can get what they need out of that? Or is this more customer facing and patient related to where we're going to streamline this entry process to be able to say that, hey, I do feel like my care provider knows who I am and has a streamlined way of understanding me through their systems, whether I'm at this clinic or that clinic. Those are all areas where AI data science and data management are key
Mhm.
to be able to do those things, and they're very real.
Just to add a few, I mean, I'll be really quick, but I mean, a few things is one around, and you're gonna have to help me with this, the metric for it, but how many organizations have dug into AI, right? And only 30% of them have actually gotten any sort of value.
Yeah, it can be
So
overbearing. I mean, we've heard it from our clients.
You're spending tons of time, effort, money to try to just get started with AI, but only 30% of them actually succeed.
Mhm.
And that most of the time is because there's no true direction,
Right.
right? I mean, if it's coming from top down, we got to do it.
Right.
You know, as we already talked about, you can go at Azure AI Foundry, AWS Bedrock, you can click on a model and you can deploy it and say, boom, we've got AI in the organization, right? So you can do that.
Right.
And
What does it really mean?
Yeah.
what's that actually doing?
Exactly, right.
Right. And so, and it's just gonna be money going out the door,
Mhm.
right? So that's just knowing to what extent and to what end is that actual order or recommendation or whatever you want to call it from the CEO actually being applied to.
Right.
This may be broad, but to you mentioned all the metrics and the stats, like a recent survey went out towards, I think it was the fourth quarter of last year. And I don't know, is it an executive survey of decision makers in IT or that would have a decision on AI? And they said that 94% of those executives were putting budgetary numbers in their budget
Mhm.
for 2025 for AI.
Right.
So again, not certain on the breadth of that.
Right.
Exactly. And at a 30% success rate.
Yeah.
Those are
setting yourself up for failure a little bit, right? If you don't have any
polar
direction,
numbers there.
kind of a shotgun
Yeah.
blast.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, what we find is success comes in the planning phase.
Right.
Mhm.
Slow down to speed up. People don't like that a lot of times, but to be successful and to be that differentiator in the marketplace, that's oftentimes where it is. It's not always first. I mean, OpenAI was first.
Mhm.
Gemini 2.0 came out last night. There's going to be so many iterations in this where
Right.
first may not matter in this case.
Right.
Mhm.
It's going to be the person that can do it best and can do it consistently
Mhm.
throughout all these changes in this marketplace. Because whether you're talking to Jensen at NVIDIA or whether you're talking to these guys in AI Labs 23 or the Claude laboratories and things like that, they're all saying that we're beating Moore's law here.
Mhm.
This is the rapidity and the expansion of this and technologies and compression and things like that to be able to fit more into these models. We just had our first trillion parameter model a couple months ago. Now that's like, who cares? We're in multi-trillion models now.
It's moving at light speed.
It's insane.
So before we get into kind of some more broad use cases that we've been able to assist clients with, kind of to your guys' point, I mean, you know, people are trying to put money for budget into their upcoming budget, but only 30% of companies actually even get close to succeeding. So, and I'm sure I know I've felt this way whenever I hear this. Like I said, whenever you're beaten over the head with the AI, you have to do it, you need to do it, you're going to be left behind. But I feel like there's no meat on any of that whenever you leave these conferences or you talk to these vendors. You know, you walk away and you're like, okay, I actually walked away with more questions than answers. So can you guys assist our clients on the webinar now with, okay, let's just find some low-hanging fruit. What are some low-cost, low-budget items just to get started? I know that you talked about obviously some things in Azure or AWS, but like give me just a few exact examples so the people on the webinar now, whenever they're done, like, you know what, I'm gonna go check that out specifically at this website to see if it may be something that could assist me.
So, I mean, but before we dive into those, I think we want to talk about some classifications of AI use cases. So we've talked about this in the past with other webinars or scenarios, but there's four major classifications that we have. The first one is just general productivity.
Mhm.
So think of that as what you mentioned very early on, right? Is but you know, creating a picture of your dog,
Right.
you know, writing an email,
Having a difficult conversation.
Yes.
I need to talk to my boss about this. How would you
Right.
approach this?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's inspiration.
Right. Ideation. You've got human augmentation. So think of that as you've got tons of different documents and you want to just synthesize those really quick so you can run through it, get the gist,
Mhm.
and then be able to make a decision on it,
Right.
right? So augmenting that human interaction, the human decision making. You've got automation, which goes into much more of having documented processes that have a lot of human elements to them
Mhm.
and just embedding AI into those human elements to just automate that. Either automate it, streamline it. It may not be fully automated, right? But at least trying to leverage it to Again, make it more simple.
Right.
And then lastly, innovation. So anything that we can do to find, whether it's new ways to analyze data, whether it's coming up with ideas for revenue generation or cost savings, or really ideation, just approach. How do I approach this scenario or this thing? So just wanted to highlight those 4 different types. But then to your point, like low cost use cases, right?
Just to kind of get going. Whenever the CEO says go, you're like, hey, at least I'm moving. I don't need, $100,000 just something to get something spun up and get going on it.
So if you've already got access to a ton of data within your organization, just plug AI on top of it, right?
Okay.
AI can view patterns or trends in a different way than a human could. So now again, you may not actually get any value out of that, but if you plug AI onto a relational database or anything like that, it could start to surface different things, new light, right?
So whenever you say plug AI into that, like give me what's an example of plugging AI into a specific data set? Like give me an example of how somebody on the webinar right now would do so.
So an example of that is if you've got Copilot, for instance, right? You've got documents that are throughout your organization. You've got SharePoint, you've got OneDrive, you've got all of that, right?
Right.
Of course, take security into consideration, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But you've got those documents that are readily available to something like a Copilot. And you can simply point it at those documents. You can simply write a prompt of what the name of that document is and where it exists, and it will start to summarize that for you and give you some insights for it, right? You've also got with it's a bit more involved, but using like AI Foundry within Azure, you can create a conversational AI element or bot on top of a relational database, right? And so you can just ask it general questions like, hey, let's plug it into a finance, right? Finance database.
Okay.
How much revenue did we make in the past month, right? And it can go in and it can find utilizing the relationships, the referential integrity between the tables of that database to simply compile those thoughts. But we have to have clean data.
Right.
We have to have data well understood, so on and so forth.
So instead of kind of combing through 45 different spreadsheets and making all your pivot tables and doing all the things that I'm sure everyone loves to do within Excel, basically you could kind of, once again, it all comes down to clean data. That's number one. But as long as that is there, then you kind of can plug some of these things on top of it to save time for not just clients, but obviously anybody in the company as well.
Something else, just this came to me. I've dealt with this in the past, and I know customers are dealing with it today. A lot of companies have this public drive or something like that where everyone's it's a shared place. A lot of people have access to it. It's been there for years, and just stuff accumulates. And HR, finance, there may be things out there that are a little bit sensitive that may not be public, probably aren't for everyone's eyes. Another thing for, AI has very, very good pattern recognition. Is there anything in this, absorb that information, train the model on it? Is there anything in here that's a social security number in it? Is there anything in here that has a pattern of a credit card number? Is there any dollar signs, whether it be payroll information, salaries? Is there any keywords from HR documentation that I could use as far as resignations or retirements or things like that I could search this for and say, wow, I have some exposure here. And how do I mitigate this?
Right.
So it's not going to solve the entire problem, but it can certainly bring light to potentially a risk or an exposure in that area.
So I know, let's talk about security of the data for a second before you kind of drop AI on top of that. I know, I think I was at a Microsoft conference and they gave an example to where they kind of did the same thing. They said, okay, we've got all these documents in SharePoint and on our local drive. Hey, we're going to throw a Copilot on top of it, throw it all together without realizing that there was some file that, it was a larger company that I think it was employees to be terminated. So you can only imagine how much fun that was whenever Tim was like, hey, okay, when's my anniversary date? And they're like, buddy, you're not going to have one because you're going to be gone here in a couple of weeks. So whenever it comes to that, what do our clients need to be aware of? How can they ensure whenever they start doing things like this on throwing some type of AI on top of a bunch of data that it does remain secure internally and externally?
Just like I just mentioned, and go from there. But use AI to your benefit as an administrator, as someone that can see those things without broadly putting this out there first. there are plenty of softwares out there that can do very similar things, and they have classification models and things like that in there. But if you're using AI yourself to be able to do this, give it a first go. Have a pilot group to make sure that anyone that sees any of this stuff is, hopefully your name is on that as well.
We'll see. I mean, it's
Yeah.
early today.
That's right. But yeah, I mean, before you just turn it loose, there has to be some piloting of these things and cleanup, frankly, because the practices that we go into, we slip into ease, right? I'll just put this thing out there, it'll be fine. I'll clean it up next week, and then we don't, and then we have sprawl and we have risk that comes from that. And a lot of that is a barrier to utilizing AI effectively going forward, is we have to kind of fix the sins of our past before we can get the benefit from the future. And that's just a reality with this kind of thing, because it's very, very powerful. And with the right prompt, it can surface the wrong thing to the wrong person. I don't know if we want to go there yet, but DeepSeek just came out, and this is it's
like the TikTok of Gen AI, right?
It exploded onto the scene. It came fast. It is 100%. I mean, it is Chinese. That is a thing. And today we're back. We're 60 years ago, right? Yes. Do we trust it? Is it? Can we use it? Even though a lot of the things we have say made in China on them, the fact is whenever we start making decisions based off their models that are using data, is it the right thing to do? And are they being biased to us to trick us, right? These are all things that are real. And there are methods today. There are Qualys is a partner of ours, and they have a product.
Total AI.
Total AI, yeah. It's just coming out. It's being built out as the market is changing. And they did a scan of DeepSeek just to say, hey, because I see a lot of people on YouTube, I see a lot of people all over the place that have already downloaded this on their phone, on their device, and things like that. It's a leaky model. It's a leaky interface. It failed about 86% of its validity checks. It was very easy to get it to become unethical, to give dangerous responses to people and things like that. I won't go into detail because it's a bit morbid, honestly, as far as some of the responses that were going. So take all of this with a grain of salt. I think you had Watson adopted this, right?
Yeah. IBM's Watson X, I believe. Yeah. So I'll just talk about that. But like, not saying that DeepSeek. So DeepSeek, if you were to download that on your personal device, that is certainly a cause for concern. That could be a security risk, right? But the big players in the game, IBM, for instance, they can take those models and they can distill them down to their base components and secure those. So if you see DeepSeek in AWS or in Azure or IBM, that's okay. I mean, they have certainly put their terms, conditions, their seal of approval, right? That they put the wrappers around it to make sure that it's going to be safe for individuals to use. But yeah, I mean, we talked about it earlier just on the DeepSeek thing, right? Is what are the primary components that determine a successful model, right? I mean, we've got multi-trillion parameter models, but is it fast? Is it resilient? Is it cost effective, right? But then security can be forgotten in that, right? But it shouldn't.
Right.
It really shouldn't. We have to be cognizant of how is our information going to be used whenever we plug that into this platform, right? And not only just for ourselves, but for public, for organizational. Is the model going to retrain itself on the information that we provided to now anyone would technically be able to access that, right? And that's a big concern with DeepSeek. Right. I mean, they in their terms and conditions state that they can pull in whatever information you give it,
right,
and make that publicly available.
Right.
So I think it just goes to show, I feel like there's going to be more and more of those that people become more and more open to using those types of platforms. I think DeepSeek was the number one, the App Store and the Google Play Store not too long ago, to be like, oh, no, once again, I can make even cooler pictures of my dog this way, and this is going to be great. So people just kind of download it, accept the T's and C's, and good to go. So that's definitely something for people to kind of watch out for in the future.
It doesn't eliminate the time to market and the technology that they use.
Right.
I mean, the Western world has been restricting technology to China for as much as we possibly can. And for their ability to train this robust of a model on not the greatest hardware, on not the greatest anything, really. But they truly revolutionized their compression, their ability to fit more into a space. And that's what we're hearing about in the news is the amount of energy
Right.
it's going to take
Mm-hmm.
to get to. We're going to reach a certain point where it's like the world can't produce enough energy to
Sustain.
and to produce these models the way that we want
Right.
on the journey to artificial general intelligence when it comes to things like that. So,
Right.
but whatever that means.
So to kind of get into the meat of the conversation, once again, like I said at the beginning of the webinar, I feel like we go to all these conferences, you hear you should be doing AI, you should be doing AI, but sometimes I feel like it's so ethereal, like it's just kind of up in the clouds, and people are like, okay, so what do I actually do with that? Can you guys provide some use cases on how we've been able to help out our clients from an AI perspective and how we've shown them value?
Yeah. So I mean, there's a few that kind of come to mind. So one is any client or any organization that has equipment or machinery, right? It's very, very important to conduct routine maintenance on that machinery to make sure it's performing optimally, right? And so within that, you can have your preventive maintenance. And so with preventive maintenance, you're creating documents that help you identify, how do I troubleshoot this machinery? How do I clean it? How do I take care of it, right? Effectively. But most of the time, there's humans that are creating these documents. And so they can be fundamentally flawed, in essence, right? You got different people with different ways of writing styles or whatever skill levels to even know what the machinery is, for instance. And so you can leverage, and we've got a client that we've done a feasibility test with, is leveraging AI to evaluate good PMs, preventive maintenance plans, and be able to provide recommendations or suggestions or even rewrite other PMs that may not be as well versed, right, or well written. And then just on that same notion, right, with machinery, equipment, not only do you have the preventive maintenance, but predictive maintenance, right? Every machine or a lot of machines nowadays have IoT sensors on them, right? They're constantly grabbing data every millisecond, right? And so can we leverage that information, use AI to identify anomalies, right? If they fall outside of a specific threshold, whether that is set by a human or if that's set by the AI itself, right? Looking at the historical averages, for instance, but identifying those anomalies and taking action. That action could be to send a notification. That could be an action to automatically adjust the temperature, the humidity, or the whatever that's surrounding, right? Whatever atmospheric components are surrounding that machine, just to make sure that it's operating as it should be. So I kind of ran through those pretty quick, but those are two that kind of build upon each other, right? Of ways that we can leverage AI and are leveraging.
And that goes for anyone with assets, which that comes to a lot of businesses and a lot of different types of assets, right? Assets need to be maintained in some way. And so just to even have schedules of any kind, but take it into the office, if you're a company that has any type of client billing procedures or things like that, especially at scale, if you have 5,000, 10,000 or greater customers that you're billing on a regular cadence, and say you go through a software update, that changes oftentimes your data models, that changes perhaps interfaces and how things are portrayed on bills and things like that. Before you send that first round of bills, a lot of times people do like a spot check. They'll say, this is what it was before, this is what it was after, and a team of people do that. Heaven forbid that cohort just simply didn't have any errors, but one other one did, and it goes out to your clients, and information is missing, information is wrong.
That never happens, right? The bills that
everything is perfect,
especially utility bills, especially here lately, that never happens, right?
Who doesn't love receiving a bill?
Right.
Yeah.
Especially it's wrong. Yeah. But whenever they're wrong, they're never wrong cheaper.
In your favor.
Yeah, that's right. It's always wrong in the opposite direction.
Yeah. So and you can apply this to billing. You can apply this in accounts payable and accounts receivable whenever you're working with different vendors and different invoices and things like that, to be able to automate or do that into your ERP system or your accounting system. But in the bill case, as far as, this is what it used to be, this is what it is currently, Vision AI, to be able, rather than have human eyes on these things and to be, a team of people looking at, again, 5,000 or so invoices and things like that, just let AI do it. Build a model and train it on what it is, what it should be, and any deviation or variance from that is flagged and put into some sort of a remediation center. Going back to manufacturing, I mean, machines are very, very delicate, and oftentimes machines are one-off. There's companies in Germany and Europe, all of the places that make these very, very specialized machines. They often have a lot of calibration points. They have a lot of areas that are able to get the best out of the machine, temperatures, compression points, speed, and variability, and things like that. Every one of those is a data point. It's a calibrate. It's a thing where a human can place a number, and hopefully it produces the least amount of scrap, the fastest and most amount of production, and things like that. But as things are moving through, who is keeping track of the best production run, right?
Right.
Where on this machine making this product, it worked the best, right? And so what you're able to do is, again, apply some data science, apply some AI to that, review all of your runs, track your scrap levels and things like that, and maximize that. Those are, I mean, some key examples across that. We talked about healthcare earlier. I mean, anywhere there's humans and there's variability, and again, every person is different, right? But there are certain things whenever you study enough information, you can begin, again, bin or cohort people into these areas to be able to provide better treatment, provide better care. In recent times, and this has been done with a lot of data, not the genome project, but the pharmacogenomics, and being able to do prescriptive medicine based off of people's uniqueness, right? So being able to say that, hey, I prescribe you this pill, but we do this DNA test, and it's like that pill's ineffective on you. And so we're going to actually prescribe you this pill. It's going to have a much better effect and things like that. That's all recent and exploding technology.
So, like we talked about, before we even get started with anything AI related, you got to make sure you got clean data. You got to make sure it's secure. There's all kinds of different classifications. It seems like there's a million different directions that you can go, even just to get things kicked off. So, how can Keller Schroeder help with that? How can you guys help our clients kind of pick the right direction that they need to go? Obviously, give your expert opinion on what makes the most sense to at least get them started on that journey. Obviously, we can help them throughout the whole journey, help them get it kicked off, whatever it may be. But what are some ways that we can help?
I think, we mentioned the whiteboard. This is just talking about it, getting it out there. And then the biggest thing is, what we may be seeing in the future is build versus buy. We're going to have every vendor ever introducing AI to their products and things like that. They already have, and it's going to be a matter of, it's the word of caution too, really. I mean, what are our vendors going to guarantee us? How much transparency are they going to provide whenever we're signing up for their AI? How do they train that? What data do they use? Is there bias in theirs? How's it going? If I'm using that to affect my customers, is that going to be passed on to them in a negative fashion? Is it going to be reputational harm in any kind of way? And if so, how am I made whole? A lot of companies, when you read the contract for your vendors or your products or commercial off-the-shelf products and things like that, your warranty and liability is bound to the overall cost of the product. And so if you're paying $10 a month for or whatever, $20 a month for your Copilot license or whatever it is, and it gives you a bad thing that you send to a customer that causes you $1 million in harm,
right?
You get $20 back,
right? Yeah. Microsoft's like, cool,
yeah. I told you to verify your sources, and I told you to do this, and I told you to do this, right? So it's, as we're going into this world, this kind of this uncharted world of all these things, it's going to be very, very important to read the terms and conditions. We check that EULA, we say, it's fine. Yeah, end user license agreement. And we're like, it's fine. It may not be fine. It may not be fine. And I think that talking the ideas through, whether you go to a best in breed vendor or you decide to own it yourself, all of those things are going to be very, very important going forward.
So with about 15 minutes left, I know we have some questions out there from those of you that are on the webinar. So we'll take a brief moment here and try to answer some of your questions.
Thank you. all right, we had a really good one come through that I want to start with first. I know it's on a lot of our clients' minds. So it is, how can we effectively integrate AI into our business operations so that it's seen as a practical, accepted tool rather than just a buzzword? And how do we balance leadership expectations to avoid assuming that AI can solve every problem while still encouraging its thoughtful adoption?
So that's a very good question.
I think that's really what's on most people's minds is
Yeah.
saying, okay, well, this is all great, but how can I make it practical? And then once again, CEOs breathing down your neck and saying, okay, we're just doing this so we can say we're doing it, or are we doing it to actually show value to ourselves, to the company, to our clients, and how can we make that practical?
And I think that's, we use the term durable sponsorship.
Mhm.
To do this is work. This, you don't just go do some AI. If you do some AI, you're probably going to be in that 70%
Right.
in the failure rate. To do this right, you need to understand your processes. How do you integrate it into your business? What is your business doing? Is it understood the steps along the way? Are we thoughtful in the methods that we chose to apply AI? Are we thoughtful in the ways that we understood how it's going to affect the people that are involved in that process and how they may or may not have less to do or have shifted priorities in their workday? It's a lot of things that we should be doing already, but it's those things that they take time. They're difficult. They require just time to change. That's all I can say about that.
And considerable planning.
Planning, yeah. And a lot of times we just want to do it now,
Mhm.
and we've got to have AI, but the ramifications of not doing it right and not taking the time to plan and be able to do that, it's huge. It's a huge downside to this. And so I think that education is a very, very important, especially for executives. We've been there. I mean, we've Wall Street Journal comes out and one of your peers in your industry says, we just did this. First of all, did they really? And how successful was it?
Right.
Or are they just first to the microphone? And secondly, is it right? Is that truly impactful, or is it just different? Is it
Right.
new? And so I think that just taking the time, slowing down a second, thinking about all those things, and then truly, again, planning for it.
Well, and sorry, just to add, I know we've said it a couple of times, and so I just want to vocalize this too. Like the 30% success rate, right? I wouldn't necessarily say, if I can speak, the 70% is a failure, right? I mean, they could have successfully used AI, but where they get you is they didn't properly plan and set the expectations, right? So CEO says, I want to do AI. Well, we can go and deploy an AI model right now, right? But if we don't understand what their expectations are, their frame of reference is, and how AI is actually supposed to be used in the organization, it could very well go haywire and be deemed a failure at that point, right? So planning everything through, where's our focus area? Can we start with a pilot group? Can we identify a single use case that we can get started with? And then who is the durable sponsorship that we can allocate? And how can we make sure that the expectations are aligned, not only with that sponsor, but with everyone within the C-suite, for instance, to make sure that they understand what the true goals are for implementing AI.
Right.
So to speak.
And to add maybe some clarity to the practicality portion of the question here, I know we've talked a lot about kind of the front end, but can you guys give us just a high level example of something that we have done for a client from an AI perspective that at the end of the day save them money?
Every use case that we build out has a value proposition.
ROI.
We don't.
I guess real quick, just for the viewers on here, just to kind of maybe get their head in the right spot, just an actual example, whether it's manufacturing, healthcare, finance.
So to be honest, the use cases that we ran through earlier are use cases that we've actually done. So like the PM use case, or the preventive maintenance, that was one that we're leveraging AI to clean up those documents. So we're saving time and effort by having to go through and manually rewrite those with a select few of very highly skilled individuals. And we're also potentially saving, or we're avoiding costs, where machines could go down and we don't have good methodologies for fixing those, troubleshooting those, whatever it may be. Predictive maintenance, right? Expanding upon that further. That's another one that we've done, evaluating those IoT sensor data, identifying the anomalies and throwing out when can we pause so that we can have planned downtime to fix whatever that anomaly is and get it back up and running rather than just letting that machine run and persist. And then we have unplanned downtime to where now we may have to go buy a whole new machine, right? So that's one, the one with the bills, evaluating the bills. There's a team of individuals that are manually looking at these bills to see if they're right? Leveraging AI, we've now freed up that entire team of individuals to go and focus on higher functioning activities.
So how many individuals were we able to free up in that use case?
Well, that was all overtime. That was the thing. So
yes.
it was a team of people that was working overtime to fit that into the schedule. So that could have been I didn't get an actual number on that. They did the value case on their side, but it was 8 to 10 people working overtime to look at all those bills. Another one, another place to think is your software vendors. We've come across a lot of clients that are paying vendors a premium to do it. They didn't know how to do it. But at the time, it made sense. But now with this AI stuff coming here, they're kind of like, this feels like we can kind of own this.
Do ourselves.
Think of it, it kind of seems like they're charging us a lot of money for this kind of simple thing. And so a lot of times it's bringing it in-house. We've seen customers paying over 6 figures a year, like on a recurring basis, for a model or some sort of analysis being done on their data that could very easily be brought in-house, probably a 1 year or less ROI on building that yourself and then sunsetting that vendor. So that goes across finance, that goes across utilities, that goes across retail even. We've had some retail customers that part of their POS system, their point of sale system and things like that, they have this module that we're paying for, and they're doing this kind of analysis or for tobacco sales or things like that. And with just a little bit of tweaking and understanding of that we're able to kind of reproduce that entire suite of tools, and then they can just get rid of that recurring expense.
Talking about the AI startups at the very beginning, right? A lot of those AI startups are using the same foundational models that we have access to today, right? So can we potentially cut out the middleman and save that cost, right? And not only with those AI startups or even the big guys, that are implementing AI into their products right now, they're doing it in a somewhat generalized way, right? But no organization has 2 of the same processes. They may be using the same ERP, for instance, but how they're interacting with that, how they're using the different accounts or the different fields could be vastly different, right? So that's where, again, cutting out that middleman and bringing that in-house and tailoring it to your organization, your business, whether that means we need to take an inventory of what those processes are, inventory of what the data is, so on and so forth. That's what we'll need to be mindful of.
Gotcha.
To go forward.
Well, I know we're running here close on time, but Mallory, I want you to tee us up with one more question before we close this out.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts about AI hallucination, and how should business users be aware and know how to perform checks and balances?
That's an excellent question as well. Those are certainly very prevalent. And so understanding the transparency of the models that you're interacting with. So how are they being trained? What's the underlying data? And what are the validation steps that you're performing to make sure that from the information, the information that we're enriching a foundational model with, is it providing the correct contextual responses, right? So we can do that automatically by building a variety of different test cases that we can then use to validate that the AI model is working correctly, right? And so those would just be some fundamentals that we should do no matter what. But that's where we can truly get to the heart of, is this operating the way that we would expect it to operate?
I think just building off of that is taking as much guesswork out of the model itself as possible and relating the context of what you're going to be working with the model with into your frame of reference. Whenever you start off with a ChatGPT or a Copilot in general, you have the broadest sense of just everything. This model is trained on you can ask it about, how do I grow turnips? You can ask it about, how do I fix a car? Those are very different things. We haven't said the term in here, but RAG, retrieval augmented generation, is a technology to reinforce models based off your information that's contextually relevant to you. And so hallucinations go away in a large part, not to say they're gone, but whenever you're talking about things that you are doing and that you can very easily spot, no, this is not accurate. For a new hire, that may be a little bit still scary still. But if you're a seasoned person, you can say, oh, AI is getting a little bit wonky on this one. I'm going to rethink my prompt a little bit and better use that. But whenever you have narrowed in the model range, if you will, the parameters of it to what's relevant to you, it's going to speak based off this information, not all information. And you're going to much easier be able to detect whenever it's going off the rails a bit.
And guardrails.
Yeah,
I mean, that's really what that is. You can set not only the guardrails by here's the information that I want this model to be pertinent on, and it will speak to that very, very well. You can also put the guardrails on if you get any prompt that is completely outside of the bands of what this conversational AI is built for. Basically respond with that is outside my bands. Like we can build those fundamental guardrails. I know I've said that a few times, but we can build that into the model itself and say, if you get any other question, then respond with that's outside of the scope of what I'm able to provide.
Great. Well, as everyone can see, I mean, these guys, they eat, breathe, sleep, data, anything AI related. They could talk to it for hours. And that's the interesting thing. I think the real thing to take home for everyone on the webinar today is that, as these guys have said, there are a million different ways that you can start. The first next step that you really need to focus on is what is going to make the most sense for me. And that's where these two really, really excel. That's something that we can do. We can come in, we can have a whiteboarding session with you and your team. We can kind of talk through, okay, what do you do? What is your process? Where are some ways that maybe we can automate a process or cut out a few parts of that process to really find an ROI? But as opposed to giving you something shiny and say, hey, here's a silver, platinum, gold option, here you go. What we like to do is come in, have a conversation, better understand your business to help you then make the most educated decision moving forward. So obviously, Blue, Cody, anybody on our data strategy team would love to sit down and just have a conversation with you over lunch, over a whiteboarding session. If that is something you're interested in, please reach out to your Keller Schroeder account manager, or I know Brian and Cody's information was at the beginning of the webinar, so please do not hesitate to reach out to them. But we are here to help in any capacity, whether it's just tossing a few questions by them or having us help you build out a full-blown AI practice and anything in between. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. With that being said, I know that we are at time today, so I appreciate everybody taking the time to sit down with us. I hope this new format was beneficial for you. We love feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. So please reach out. Let us know what worked, what you would like to see more of, what you didn't like to see, and some things we may want to lean into. So with that being said, I hope everybody has a good rest of the week. Have a good weekend. Go Birds.
Thank you.
You.